The Great War, World War I, or the First World War, was a global war that lasted from the 28th of July 1914 to the 11th of November 1918. It was one of the deadliest conflicts in history, with an estimated 15 to 22 million people dying. It involved all of the great powers of Europe, and was the first war to be fought on a worldwide scale, with conflicts in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Our story begins in the summer of 1914, when Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, visited Sarajevo, Bosnia. On June 28, while driving through the city, the Archduke and his wife were assassinated by Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist. This event set off a chain reaction that led to the outbreak of war. Within a month of the assassination, Austro-Hungary declared war on Serbia and began its invasion. Soon, other European powers began to mobilize for war. Germany supported Austria unconditionally, while the rest of the powers divided into two opposing alliances. The Triple Entente, which consisted of France, Russia, and Britain, opposed the Triple Alliance of Austria, Hungary, Germany, and Italy. However, Italy would later switch sides and join the Triple Entente. The initial plan of the German Empire called for a quick victory over France, and then an invasion of Belgium to face the British. To do this, they had to pass through neutral Belgium, which caused a political crisis in Britain. The Belgians prepared to resist the Germans, but it was clear that they could not withstand a full-scale German invasion. So Britain made the decision to deploy its army to defend Belgium. On August 4, 1914, the British government declared war on Germany after it became clear that Germany's plan involved invading neutral Belgium. 3 days later, the British Expeditionary Force, also known as the Old Contemptibles, arrived in Belgium and took up defensive positions along the Weser River. The BEF consisted of 4 infantry divisions and 1 cavalry division, totaling around 87,000 men. They were equipped with the latest weapons and were confident in their ability to defend Belgium. However, they were outnumbered by the Germans, who had more than 160,000 soldiers in Belgium. Despite being outnumbered, the BEF put up a strong defense and managed to stop the Germans from advancing further. The BEF's resistance gave the Belgians time to evacuate important areas and regroup their forces. As soon as the British troops began arriving in Belgium, the Germans started to shell them. One of the worst incidents was the bombardment of the coastal town of Ostend, where hundreds of civilians were killed. Another heavy bombardment occurred at the fortress of Ypres, where the Germans dropped thousands of high-explosive bombs, causing massive casualties. These attacks were part of the Schlieffen Plan, which aimed to quickly defeat France before turning its attention to Russia. The plan involved attacking through Belgium and encircling Paris from the north. However, the British defense of Belgium slowed down the German advance, forcing them to spend more time and resources than anticipated. As weeks passed, both sides realized that the war would be much longer and more costly than they had expected. Trench warfare became the norm, and millions of soldiers on both sides suffered from the harsh conditions and constant threat of death. While the Germans were able to make some gains in the south and capture cities like Liege, Namur, and Antwerp, they faced fierce resistance from the British and Belgian forces. Even though the Germans had more troops, better weapons, and stronger leadership, the British were able to hold their ground. This was due to several factors, including the determination and bravery of the soldiers, the support of the home front, and the introduction of new technologies such as tanks. The defense of Belgium by the BEF was a key moment in the war and had a significant impact on the outcome. It gave the French time to mobilize their defenses, and ultimately led to the stalemate that characterized the Western Front for the next 4 years. Without the British presence, it is likely that the Germans would have been able to achieve a quick victory in the West and potentially end the war sooner. After the Battle of Ypres, the German command realized that they had underestimated the strength of the Belgian people. They also understood that the Schlieffen Plan had failed, and that they would have to fight a war of attrition against the British and French. This led to a change in tactics and the start of the War of Position. Both sides began to dig in and build elaborate networks of trenches, underground tunnels, machine gun emplacements, and barbed wire entanglements. This made it extremely difficult to advance, and resulted in a stalemate that lasted 4 years. The War of Position was characterized by brutal attacks and counterattacks, each resulting in heavy casualties. The fighting was particularly intense along the Western Front, where the British and German forces faced each other across a narrow strip of land known as No Man's Land. No Man's Land was a desolate wasteland of mud, barbed wire, and corpses. Soldiers who ventured into this area were exposed to heavy fire from machine guns, artillery, and snipers. Those who survived the journey often found themselves trapped in enemy territory with little hope of escape. Some managed to hide in the trenches or tunnels, while others were taken prisoner, but many were simply left to wander the wasteland until they died of exhaustion, starvation, or exposure. The stalemate on the Western Front led to a loss of morale and a growing sense of disillusionment among the troops. The horrors of trench warfare and the heavy casualties had taken a toll on their mental and physical health. Soldiers began to question the purpose of the war and the leaders who had sent them into this bloody conflict. This disillusionment was reflected in the art and literature of the time, which often depicted the futility and horror of the war. Artists such as Otto Dix and George Grosz created powerful images that captured the brutality of trench warfare and the psychological toll it took on soldiers. Writers like Erich Maria Remarque in All Quiet on the Western Front gave voice to the experiences and feelings of a generation lost to war. Despite the stalemate, there were still moments of intense action along the Western Front. One such event was the Battle of the Somme, which began on July 1, 1916. This battle was one of the bloodiest in the war, and resulted in more than 1 million casualties, including 420,000 British and 200,000 German soldiers. The battle was fought over a period of 6 months, and involved massive attacks and counterattacks. Despite the heavy casualties, neither side was able to make any significant gains. Another major battle on the Western Front was the Battle of Passchendaele, also known as the Third Battle of Ypres. This battle began on July 31, 1917, and lasted until November 10. It was one of the most costly battles in British military history, and resulted in more than 325,000 casualties. Like the Battle of the Somme, the fighting was intense, and resulted in heavy losses for both sides. The battle was marked by brutal attacks and counterattacks, as well as the use of new technologies such as tanks and poison gas. Despite the heavy casualties, neither side was able to make any significant gains. The Western Front was not the only place where the BEF saw action during World War I. The British also fought in other theaters of the war, such as the Middle East and Asia. For example, the BEF's role in the capture of Jerusalem in 1917 was an important moment in the campaign to capture the Holy Land. In conclusion, the defense of Belgium by the British Expeditionary Force was a crucial moment in World War I. It not only helped to prevent a quick German victory, but also contributed to the eventual stalemate that led to the war's conclusion. Despite facing numerous challenges, including being outnumbered, facing stronger opponents, and fighting in unfamiliar terrain, the BEF stood firm and made significant contributions to the war effort. Their bravery and determination are remembered to this day. Furthermore, the war had a profound impact on the people of Belgium, who suffered greatly from the fighting and the occupation of their country. The legacy of the war can still be seen today in the memorials and museums dedicated to the fallen soldiers. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.